and again. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Research mainly involves say numbers of interrelated activities and that various operations are interdependent. That is the research. Okay. And while we are doing the research now, the first step in the research is for the researcher to decide upon the general area or the aspect of the subject area and the general area of the interest also, in where they will be start the research, in which project work they will start the research work. Like the, if the one researcher may be interested to do on the basis of the diabetic, or someone else in the will be study about the HIV or AIDS, this is the itself is not sufficient, because at this stage now but decision gives a broad area and it indicates the road we choose from the number, but the specific details are lacking. um, and it does not tell us how to plan and organize the study. Okay. And specifically, researcher may be on a specific topic in an area about which not much is known also. Selecting a topic, one cannot log into research work. We need to have a very good vision about the critical components, that is the what data is to be collected and by which methods and how to organize and analyze the data also. Okay. Uh, First, there are three questions need to be addressed when formulating a research work. And why do I want these particular questions to be answered? And what are the possible solution? And that possible solution or answer to the questions of the problem in terms that satisfy the rationale also. And next one is the specifying the objective of the research problem. First, we will be formulate the hypothesis. Formulating the hypothesis. What do you mean by hypothesis? For the research work, na, hypothesis is very vital. What is that hypothesis? Hypothesis is the researchers formulate the tentative answers or the solution to the research question or the problem. These propose the solution or the explanation constitute the hypothesis. Okay. Hypothesis is nothing. Hypothesis is the unproven statement is the hypothesis. Okay. And these hypotheses are mainly supposition that are tested by the collecting the fact that leads to their acceptance or the rejection. That what we are the supposition that may be accepted, that may be rejected also. And they are not the assumption to be taken for the granted, neither are they belief that the investigators sent out to the proof. And they are the refutable prediction also. Okay. And mainly, many persons doing the researches, especially first time the researchers do not formulate the hypothesis. Okay. And the hypothesis mainly guide the researcher to identify and to select to other variable and need to study. Okay. Hypothesis gives the direction. Hypothesis gives the path. Hypothesis gives the ways. It helps mainly to determine what in the kind of data we need to collect and way to organize it also. That is the hypothesis. And hypothesis can be called the provisional formulation or the tentative solution answer to the problems when we choose the hypothesis. And mainly that the certain logical consequence after the collection of the data. After the collection of the data, now we have to analyze the data very briefly. Okay. If they match, that is our expectation, materialize, we accept the hypothesis. We say the hypothesis is proved. Okay. If not, we reject the hypothesis. That means we have to accept the hypothesis. If we will not rejected that hypothesis means it must be accepted. That type of hypothesis, which hypothesis is accepted by us, na, it is called as the alternative hypothesis. There are mainly two type of hypothesis is there. One is the null hypothesis, and the another one is your alternative hypothesis. If the null hypothesis is rejected, once the hypothesis is rejected, means the other hypothesis will be accepted. That is called as the what? Alternative hypothesis. Okay. And sometimes we maybe need to formulate the alternative hypothesis. Okay. And mainly now what is the basic characteristic of the good hypothesis? Good, uh, what is the main characteristic of the good hypothesis? Mainly, the good hypothesis, it shows the provide the proper direction. Okay, means hypothesis provides the direction to research and prevent the reviews of irrelevant literature and the collection of useless or the excessive data also. Okay, and mainly the hypothesis ensure the collection of the relevant data necessary to answer the question arising from the statement of the problem. Okay, that means I will give you one example. In the research problem, study habits and the achievement of the distance education learners. There are two types of education we are getting. One is the distance, or another one is the continuing education. If we will consider about these two education, if we will research in these two topics, the researcher may frame the hypothesis. The learners putting in more study hours achieve more in the examination also. If we will give more time for a particular work, then we will get the very good result. The researcher will collect the data about the number of hours being put in by the learners for study and their achievement in the examination. That means the good hypothesis, the main characteristic of the good hypothesis is that it provides the direction, it provides the well path, it provides the good direction, and also this hypothesis mainly hypothesis should be testable. Okay, hypothesis should be stated in such a way that to indicate a expected difference or the expected relationship between the measures used in the research. Mainly, the hypotheses are the proposition about the relationship between the variables. Variables means the variable means in variable means is the number. How many numbers in the research for the research worker you are collecting the data, the numbers. That one is the variables, and hypotheses are the mainly proposition about the relationship between the variables. This can be tested empirically. There is no relationship between the two variables. Such proposition can be tested by means of the empirical data. Okay, that means whatever you will take the for the research work, that hypothesis should be testable. Okay, and the hypothesis should be brief and clear. Whatever you will be take for the research now, and what for the hypothesis work, you that should be very clearly mentioned, and that should be very brief. It should not be very lengthy for. Okay, that is the all these three vital. These are like the characteristic of the good hypothesis. Good hypothesis shows the providing the direction. It also hypothesis should be the testable, and the hypothesis should be very brief and clear also. Okay, in the form of hypothesis, there are mainly two types of hypothesis. One is the if we will consider mainly consider as to whether the infant if we will consider about the infant mortality rate. Okay, I will give you the example of the infant mortality rate. If we are concerned as to the whether the infant mortality rates are different in the various geographical area. If we will be the hypothesis could be like this, positive. Forms of in the forms of hypothesis, mainly the positive declaration. If we will consider about the infant mortality rate, the infant mortality rate is different in the various geographical regions. In the positive declaration, that means research hypothesis, the infant mortality rate is higher in the higher in one region than the other. That means in some area the mortality rate will be increases, the rate of mortality will be very more, and in other area, if you will compare with the other area, the rate of mortality will be very decreases. And the negative declaration means it's the null hypothesis. I already told about the null hypothesis. There are mainly basically two types of hypothesis there is there. One is the null hypothesis, and another one is your what? Alternative hypothesis. In the null hypothesis, there is the no means there is no difference between the infant's mortality ratio of the two region. If you will consider about the true geographical region, the mortality rate they will not consider. They will in this type of in the null hypothesis there is no difference between the infant mortality ratio of the two region. Okay, that is the null hypothesis. And another one is your implicit question. That means to study the association between the infant mortality and the geographic region. In this, the implication question, implicit questions mean in this case, now you have to correlate. If the study association between the rate of mortality rate, that means there is the association between the infant mortality rate and the geographical region. Okay. And what is the declarative hypothesis? In the declarative hypothesis means when a researchers makes a positive statement about the outcome of the study, okay, we get a declarative hypothesis. When we will got the positive outcome, that type of hypothesis is called as the declarative hypothesis. Example, the performance of the non-academic healthy children on problem solving tasks is significantly higher than that of the anemic children. If we will consider about the anemic children, the performance of the anemic children definitely it will be reduced than that of the non-anemic children. All of you understand what I am saying? Sridatri,
Yes, ma'am.
যদি
Yes, ma'am.
ଡେଫିନେଟଲି ଜଣେ ଯଦି ଫିଜିକାଲି ଯଦି ଅନଫିଟ୍ ଥିବ ତ ସେ କେମିତି ମେଣ୍ଟାଲି ପାଠ ପଢାରେ ଆଉଟକମ୍ ଭଲ ଦେଇପାରିବ, ଠିକ ନା ନାଇଁ? ତ ବୁଝି ହଉଛି ନା ମୋ କଥାଟା?
Agya, ma'am.
ବାସ୍ that type of hypothesis is called as the declarative hypothesis. Okay, that type of hypothesis, the performance, if we will consider about the anemic and the non-anemic students, if the performance of the non-anemic healthy children on the problem-solving task is significantly higher than that of the what anemic children, that is called as the declarative hypothesis. And another one is your null hypothesis. What is that null hypothesis? I already told you. In null hypothesis, the null hypothesis is a non-directional hypothesis. There is no direction. You just remember like this. If there is no direction in the hypothesis, that is called as the null hypothesis. And and this null hypothesis will be designated as the H0. Okay, the symbol of the null hypothesis is the H0. There is no significant difference between the performance of the two groups of the students. Okay, one following the conventional system of the education and the second following the distance mode of education. Okay, if I will tell you one thing, if there is no major difference between the two types of education, like if someone will be pass out from the MSc DFSM from the continuing education, and where you are in very you are pursuing in the like a continuing education, so means distance education, both are the same thing. So these type of people will consider about this now. This type of hypothesis is called as the null hypothesis. In this null hypothesis, there is no significant difference. Okay, like ଆମେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଯେମିତିକି ଆମେ ମନେକର ଗଭର୍ଣ୍ଣମେଣ୍ଟ ସ୍କୁଲରେ ପାଠ ପଢିବା 10th ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ ଆଉ ପ୍ରାଇଭେଟ ସ୍କୁଲରେ ପାଠ ପଢିବା କିଛି ତ ଡିଫରେନ୍ସ ରହିଛି, ବଟ୍ ଏମିତି ସେମିତି କିଛି ମେଜର ଡିଫରେନ୍ସ ନାହିଁ ଯେ ମାନେ ଯୋଉଟା କି ଜଣେ ଏଇଥିରେ ପଢିଲା କି ସେଇଥିରେ ପଢିଲା, ଯେତେବେଳେ କିଛି ବି ସିଗ୍ନିଫିକାନ୍ସ ଡିଫରେନ୍ସ ରହୁନାହିଁ ବିଟୱିନ୍ ଦ ଟୁ ପରଫର୍ମାନ୍ସ of the two groups of the students. Okay, this type of hypothesis is called as the null hypothesis. Understood? Bujhiuji, Rakesh,
Yes, ma'am.
Sridatri, are you understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So there is no vast difference between there is no difference between the students. So And in the null hypothesis, the symbol of the null hypothesis is the H0. Okay. And since a null hypothesis can be statistically tested, it is also known as the statistical hypothesis. Okay. This null hypothesis is otherwise called as the testing hypothesis. This null hypothesis is otherwise called as the statistical hypothesis. Okay. And mainly in the null hypothesis, mainly emphasize that the researcher must remain unbiased throughout his or her research efforts. Okay. In this type of research, in this type of null hypothesis, na, the researcher remains unbiased throughout the research work. Na, the researcher will be not unbiased. Okay. And in the null hypothesis, mainly challenges the assertion of the declarative hypothesis and also denies it altogether. Okay. Sometimes the null hypothesis is rejected only when the probability of its having the occurred by a mere chance in 1 out of the 100 or 0.1%. In such instance, na, we will consider the probability of its having the occurred by chance to be too little to be considered. And we will reject the chance component of the null hypothesis and take the occurrence to be due to the genuine tendency. And in the alternative hypothesis, the symbol of the alternative hypothesis is the H1, and the null hypothesis symbol is the H0. You remember these two, okay? And this null hypothesis is otherwise called as the testing hypothesis. This null hypothesis is otherwise called as the statistical hypothesis, and null hypothesis is designed as the H0, whereas the alternative hypothesis is designed as the H1. It's the major difference between the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Sir? Hypothesis in the questions form. Hypothesis in the question form means mainly in hypothesis mainly will instruction through video program affect the learning of students of distance education. And these statement shows that instruction through video program is not related to the learning. That means uh, the state of hypothesis in questions forms because it appears to be quite useful to write down all the questionnaire that one want to answer in a particular research story. Okay, a researcher mainly faces the difficulties in predicting the outcome of the study and stating the hypothesis in the declarative form. Okay, but in what nothing that the questions forms is less powerful than the declarative or the null form of the hypothesis. And now I will discuss about the types of hypothesis. In types of hypothesis, there are mainly many kinds of hypothesis. Okay. If there is the association between the exposure to the specific variable and the diseases. Okay. If there is the association between the variables means हमें जो sample नहीं थी, sample size नहीं थी, बुझिला, that is called as the variable. Association between the exposure to the specific variable and the disease. Association mainly refers to the statistical dependence between the two variables. That is the degree to which the rate of disease in person with a specific exposure is either higher or the lower than the rate of disease among those without exposure. Understood? In the association refers to the statistical dependency between the two variables. Okay, that is the mainly the degree to which the rate of disease in person with the specific exposure to either higher or the lower, then the rate of disease among those without exposure. Understood? And however, it must be emphasized that the association does not mean that there is a cause and effect relationship. You remember this point? The association, mainly the association does not mean that there is the relationship between the cause and effect. For example, we may find that those who eat vegetables, if we will consider about the carcinoma, those who are eating regular basis, they will consume the vegetables and the fruits and have a very lower incidence of carcinoma. But that does not mean that eating vegetables and fruits can totally prevent the cause of the carcinoma. Understood, na? बुझिएला
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
what
ma'am.
is association? Cause and effect relationship. That means if those who are having, means if we will find that those who eat regular basis, they will consume the seasonal and regional fruits and vegetable in their regular basis diet, have very lower incidence of carcinoma. But that it does not mean that the eating vegetables in the fruits can totally prevent or cure the carcinoma. This is the association. It's like cause and what relation, cause and effect relationship. And mainly want to see if there is a causal association. Causal association means what? Whether a change in the frequency or the quality of the variable we are exposing our subject to there in a corresponding change in the frequency of the disease or the outcome we are interested. Okay, and that is the what? Cause association, causal association. And a good hypothesis must be it shows the consist with the known fact and theories. Okay, the very good hypothesis mainly it consists with the known fact and the theories and might be even expected to predict or anticipate previously unknown data also. Previously data and able to explain the data in the very simpler terms is the symptoms of the good hypothesis and stated in the simplest possible term. While you are formulating the hypothesis, now you have to use very simplest terms and depending upon the complexity of the concept also it involves in the research problems. Okay, stated in a way that it can be tested for its being probably true or probably false also. This is all about your hypothesis. What is null hypothesis? What is the good characteristic of the hypothesis? What is alternative hypothesis? What is declarative hypothesis? I already discussed about that. Now I will discuss about the design of the.
Ma'am, ma'am, I have one doubt.
Sridhar, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
कौन problem है आपको?
Ma'am, if we rewrite, no, ma'am, if we write the hypothesis in a simple language or in our language, ma'am, is it, it will become null hypothesis?
और थोड़ी को repeat it.
ମ୍ୟାମ୍ ଯଦି ଆମେ ହାଇପୋଥେସିସ୍ ଟା ସିମ୍ପଲ କରିକି ନିଜ ଲାଙ୍ଗୁଏଜ ରେ ଲେଖିବୁ କିନ୍ତୁ ତା
हम्म
ସବଜେକ୍ଟ ସେମ୍ ଥିବ କିନ୍ତୁ ଆମେ
हाँ
ତାକୁ ରିରାଇଟ୍ କରିବୁ ସିମ୍ପଲ କରିକି ନିଜ ଲାଙ୍ଗୁଏଜ ରେ ତ
हाँ
ସେଇଟା
लिखी
କଣ
पारे.
ନଲ୍ ହାଇପୋଥେସିସ୍ ମ୍ୟାମ୍ ସେଇଟା କଣ ନଲ୍ ହାଇପୋଥେସିସ୍ ହେଇଯିବ?
ନଲ୍ ହାଇପୋଥେସିସ୍ ମାନେ ତମେ କଣ ବୁଝିଲ ତମେ? ମୁଁ ବି ଯୋଉ ପଢିଲି ନଲ୍
ମ୍ୟାମ୍
ହାଇପୋଥେସିସ୍ ମାନେ
ଯାହାର
କଣ ବୁଝିଲ?
ଆଉଟକମ୍ ରେ କିଛି ଡିଫରେନ୍ସ ନଥିବ ନୋ ଡିଫରେନ୍ସ ଇନ୍ ଦ ଆଉଟକମ୍।
କିଛି ଡିପେଣ୍ଡେନ୍ସି ନଥିବ ଯୋଉଟା ଦି ଜଣଙ୍କ ଭିତରେ କିଛି ରିଲେସନ ନଥିବ ବୁଝିପାରୁଛ ନା ନାଇଁ
ଆଚ୍ଛା
କଣ ବୁଝିଲ
ମ୍ୟାମ୍
ତମେ ନଲ୍
ଆଉଟକମ୍
ହଁ ୟେସ୍
ଆଉଟକମ୍ ମ୍ୟାମ୍
ଆଉଟକମ୍
ସେମ୍ ଥିବ?
ହଁ ହଁ null hypothesis ରେ
ଆଉଟକମ୍
କଣ
ସେମ୍ ଥିଲେ ଚଳିବ କିନ୍ତୁ ତାର ମାନେ ଇଏଟା
ସେମାନଙ୍କ
ଅଲଗା
ଭିତରେ
ଥିବ।
ହଁ ସେମାନଙ୍କ ଭିତରେ ମାନେ ଏତେ ସେମିତି ସିଗ୍ନିଫିକାଣ୍ଟ ଡିଫରେନ୍ସ କିଛି ନଥିବ ବୁଝିହେଲା ଯଦି
ହଁ
ଆମେ
ହୁଁ
ଆମେ ମନେକର ଏଜୁକେସନ କଥା ଚିନ୍ତା କରିବା ମନେକର ଯେମିତି ତମେ ଏବେ କରୁଛ ମାଷ୍ଟର୍ସ କୋଉଥିରେ ଏଇଟା କି ଏଜୁକେସନ ଆମର କଣ୍ଟିନ୍ୟୁଇଂ
କୋଉଟାରେ
ଏଜୁକେସନ କଣ୍ଟିନ୍ୟୁଇଂ
ହଁ
ଏଜୁକେସନ
କଣ୍ଟିନ୍ୟୁ
ନା ଡିଷ୍ଟାନ୍ସ ଯୋଉଟା ନୁହଁ କି ଏବେ ଯୋଉଟା ତମେ କରୁଛ
ହଁ
କିନ୍ତୁ ପିଲାମାନେ ଅଛନ୍ତି ଯୋଉମାନେ କି ବହୁତ ସାରା ୟୁନିଭର୍ସିଟି ମଧ୍ୟ ଏଇ ସେମ କୋର୍ସକୁ ରେଗୁଲାର ବେସିସ ରେ ଦଉଛି ନା ନାଇଁ
ୟେସ୍ ମ୍ୟାମ୍
ଦଉଛି ନା ନାଇଁ ଦଉଛି ନା ନାଇଁ ସିମ୍ପଲ ଜିନିଷ ବୁଝି ହଉନି କଣ ତମକୁ ତ ଆମେ ଏଇଟା
ୟେସ୍ ମ୍ୟାମ୍
ଆମେ ଏଇଟା କଣ୍ଟିନ୍ୟୁଇଂ ଏଜୁକେସନରେ ନଉଛନ୍ତି ଡିଷ୍ଟାନ୍ସରେ ଆମେ ନଉଛନ୍ତି ବଟ୍ ଅଦର କୋର୍ସ ସେଇ ସେମ୍ କୋର୍ସକୁ ଆମେ କଣ୍ଟିନ୍ୟୁ ରେଗୁଲାର ବେସିସ୍ କ୍ଲାସ କରିବା ଇଚ୍ ପ୍ରାକ୍ଟିକାଲ କ୍ଲାସ ଆଟେଣ୍ଡ କରିବା ଥିଓରି କ୍ଲାସ ଆଟେଣ୍ଡ କରିବା ଆଉ ପୁରା ଏଫର୍ଟ ଲଗେଇକି ପଢିବା ଇଜ୍ ଦେୟାର ଏନି ସାର୍ଟିଫିକେଟ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଆମେ ନବା ଡିଗ୍ରୀ ଆମେ ନବା ଇଜ୍ ଦେୟାର ଏନି ଡିଫରେନ୍ସ ବିଟୱିନ୍ ଦିସ୍ ଏଜୁକେସନ ଆଣ୍ଡ ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ଏଜୁକେସନ unless
ନୋ
until
ମ୍ୟାମ୍
ଯଦି ତମେ there is no difference understood ନା there is no difference because ତମମାନେ ଯେହେତୁ କ୍ଲାସ କରୁନ କି ତମମାନେ ଭଲସେ ଏଫର୍ଟ ଲଗେଇକି ପଢୁନ ସେଟା ତମ ଲାକୁନା ବଟ୍ ମେଟେରିଆଲ୍ସ ଯୋଉ ପାଉଛ ଯୋଉ ଫ୍ୟାକଲ୍ଟି ମେମ୍ବର ପାଉଛ ଯୋଉ ଲ୍ୟାବ ପାଉଛ ସେଥିରେ ତମେ କରୁନ ସେଟା ତମର ପ୍ରୋବ୍ଲେମ ସେଟା ତ ଥୋଡି ଇଏର ପ୍ରୋବ୍ଲେମ ନାଇଁ ନା ତ ସେଇ ଟାଇପର ଯୋଉ ଯଦି ଆମେ ସେଇ ଦିଟାକୁ ଆମେ କମ୍ପାରିଜନ କରିବା ତ ଦ୍ୟାଟ ଟାଇପ ଅଫ significant difference. There is no significant difference between the performance of the two groups of the students. Okay, and one following the conventional system of education, and other one is, and the second one is follow the distance mode of education. There is no difference between these two types of education. That's why this type of hypothesis is called as the null hypothesis. And null hypothesis को हमें ତାକୁ H0 ଦ୍ୱାରା ଆମେ ଡିନୋଟ କରିବା ବଟ୍ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଆମେ ଅଲ୍ଟରନେଟିଭ ହାଇପୋଥେସିସ୍ କଥା ଚିନ୍ତା କରିବା ଅଲ୍ଟରନେଟିଭ ହାଇପୋଥେସିସ୍ ଡିନୋଟେଡ୍ ଅଛି ଦ H1 ଓକେ ଏବେ
ୟେସ୍
ବୁଝିପାରିଲ
ମ୍ୟାମ୍ ୟେସ୍ ମ୍ୟାମ୍
ନା ପୁଣି କିଛି ଡାଉଟ୍ ରହିଲା
Alert with captions visible.
No,
Use
ma'am.
window switcher to
understood Sridhatri
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
okay okay now I will discuss about the design of the research what is the research design okay for the ଆମେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଗୋଟେ ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ଯିବା ଗୋଟେ thesis या ଗୋଟେ କୌଣସି ସବଜେକ୍ଟ କୁ କୌଣସି ଟପିକ ନେଇକି either you are the students of food science ନା ତ ଆପଣ ମାନେ either ଆମେ ଗୋଟେ disease କୁ ନେଇକି ତାକୁ food କୁ correlate କରିକି ଆମେ ମଧ୍ୟ ଆମେ ଡିଜାଇନ ମାନେ ଗୋଟେ ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚ ବନେଇ ପାରିବା otherwise କାହାର ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚ ର ଲାଇକିଂ କାହାର କୋଉଟା ଥାଇପାରେ ତ ତାକୁ ନେଇକି ଯେତେବେଳେ ଆମେ ପ୍ରୋସିଡ୍ କରିବା ତ ପ୍ରଥମ କାମ ହେଲା ଆମେ ଗୋଟେ ଫ୍ରେମ୍ ଆଉଟ୍ ଗୋଟେ ଡିଜାଇନ ଗୋଟେ ଲେଆଉଟ୍ ଫାଷ୍ଟ ଆମେ କରିବା ତାପରେ ଯାଇକି ଆମେ ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚକୁ proceed କରିବା ଯେମିତି କି the design of the research in the design of the research mean designing means what ଯେତେବେଳେ ଆମେ ଗୋଟେ କପଡା ଗୋଟେ ମାର୍କେଟରୁ ନେଇକି ଆସୁଛନ୍ତି ଆମେ କଣ କରୁଛନ୍ତି ଗୋଟେ କପଡାକୁ ଆମେ ଗୋଟେ ଫ୍ରେମ୍ ଆଉଟ୍ କରୁଛନ୍ତି ଯେ ନାଇଁ ଆମେ ଏମିତି ଏମିତି କାଟିବା ଏମିତି ସିଲେଇଲେ ସେମିତି ହେଲେ ଭଲ ଲାଗିବ ସେମିତି ହେଲେ ଭଲ ଲାଗିବ ତ ଗୋଟେ ଡିଜାଇନିଂ କରୁଛନ୍ତି ନା ତ ସେଇଭଳିଆ ଗୋଟେ ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚ କରିବା ପୂର୍ବରୁ ଆମକୁ ଗୋଟେ ଡିଜାଇନ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ପଡିବ ଗୋଟେ ଫ୍ରେମ୍ ଆଉଟ୍ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ପଡିବ ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚ ତାକୁ କୁହାଯାଏ design of research. It is called as the design of research by designing of research. Okay, what is the designing of research? Designing is the process of making the decision before the situation arises in which the decision has to be carried out. Okay, and it is a process of deliberate anticipation directed towards the bringing on expected situation under control. Designing is the process of making the decision before the situation arises in which the decision has to be carried out, and it is a process of deliberate anticipation directed towards bringing an expected situation under control. That is called as the research design. Okay, and when developing the research design, we need to make into account the we have to follow the some points like the what the study ଆମେ ପ୍ରଥମେ ଆମେ ଦେଖିବାକୁ ପଡିବ ଆମେ କାହାକୁ ନେଇକି ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚ ଡିଜାଇନ ଆମେ ପ୍ରିପେୟାର କରିବା କଣ ଆମ ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚର ମୋଟୋ କଣ ରହିବ ଓ ଟପିକକୁ ଆମେ ଫାର୍ଷ୍ଟ ଚୁଜ୍ କରିବା what the study is about and what are the type of data needed for the progress of that research what type of data you have to need it okay and why the study is being made what is the necessity of that research and where the data needed can be found okay that's is very very means important because if we will be do the research in the disease specific. That means you will be collect the data from the hospital only. If you will be research in the field work, then you have to go to the field work for the collection of the data. Okay, where the data needed can be found also. Where or in what area the study will be carried out. Okay, and how much materials or how many cases will be needed also. What basis of selection will be used, and mainly what techniques of gathering the data will be adopted. For the collection of data, you have to adopt the different types of techniques or tools you have to use for the preparation of your research. And how will the data be analyzed? After the collection of data is very vital. After the collection of the data, now you have to analyze the data properly. If you will not analyze the data properly, then you will not progress to your what research work. Okay, thus the research design is the arrangement of the condition for collection and analysis of the data in a manner that aims to combine the relevance to research purpose with economy in this procedure. It's also very vital. Okay, for the any research work na, economy also play a very vital role. For the research work na, you have to publish the what you have to publish the different types of articles in the national level, in the international level. For the publication of your articles, you have to publish it in the some paid journal or very less non-paid journal is there. But if you will be publish your article in the non-paid journal, then I think that it's not very effective. Okay, that's why you have to publish your data in a paid journal, because that type of journals is very international level. It will be very affected. International level. It will be very much acceptable. Okay, that's why now the say research design is the arrangement of the condition of for the collection and the analysis of data in a manner that aims to combine relevance to the research purpose with the economy in the procedure. Okay. Formulating the research design has the several advantages. And what are the advantages of this formulating design? To determine how much inaccuracy can be tolerated. Okay. And the time mainly required to time required so that the time plan can be made. Okay. ଯେତେବେଳେ ଆମେ research କରିବା ଆଗକୁ ଯାଇକି ତମେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଏଇ food and nutrition research କରିବ ତ ଆମକୁ time period also play a very vital role. Because 3 ବର୍ଷର ଜିନିଷକୁ ଯଦି ଆମେ 30 ବର୍ଷ ଲଗେଇବା, then there is no value. Understood na? And the costing of the project is also very vital. And the research design, na? I already discussed about the research design. And the research design must comprise of the following things: mainly the sampling design, the observational design, and the statistical design, and the operational design. Okay. The research design mainly comprises of the following things. The first one is the sampling design. को प्रकार तमे sampling नीचा, को प्रकार तमे sample को selection करीचा, and the observational design. Third one is the statistical design, and the fourth one is your operational design. What is the sampling design? Sampling design is mainly deals with the methods of selecting the subject for the study. Okay, methods of selecting the subject for the study, that is the sampling design. And the second one is the observational design. What is that observational design? Observational design means mainly this observational design, it mainly relate to the condition under which the observation are to be made. Okay, and the third one is your statistical design. What is the statistical design? This statistical design mainly it deals with the how many subjects are to be observed and how the observation are to be analyzed. Okay, that is called as the statistical design. And the fourth one is your operational design. What is that operational design? Operational designs means it mainly deals with the specific techniques by which the procedure specified in the sampling and the statistical and observational design can be carried out. This is all about the research design. Research design mainly comprised of the four things. One is the sampling design, and second one is your observational design, and the third one is your statistical design, and the last one is your operational design. Okay, this is all about your research design. And the research purpose. What is the why we will do the research. Okay, and what is the purpose of this research work? Why it is necessary? The research purpose mainly grouped broadly under the this category. Mainly, if we will do the research, the chief purpose of the research is that mainly to gain familiar with the phenomenon or to achieve the new insight into it. Okay, after the research work only to gain the familiarity with the phenomenon or to achieve the new insight. And second one is the to portray accurately the characteristic of a particular situation or a growth of the or the individuals also. Okay, and to determine the frequency with which the something occurs. Okay, to determine the frequency with which the something will be occurs. By way to the main purpose of the research is to gain the familiarity with the phenomenon or to mainly achieve the new insight into it, and the mainly the portray accurately the characteristic of a particular situation or a group, and to determine the frequency with which the something will be occur, and to test a hypothesis of a causal relationship between the variables. I already discussed about that, the cause and effect of the relationship. That to test the hypothesis of a causal relationship between the variables. Okay. And the studies characterized by this purpose are called as the experimental studies. What is experimental study? Experimental studies means to test a hypothesis of a causal relationship between the variables. It is called as the experimental studies. What is experimental study? In the experimental study, mainly to test the hypothesis of a causal relationship between the variables. Studies characterized by this purpose is called as the experimental study. And the what is the descriptive or the diagnostic study? In the hypothesis, now there is the descriptive and the diagnostic study. In this type of study, na, the major consideration in is very accuracy. Therefore, the research design for such study, for the descriptive study and for the diagnostic study, the research design for this study must be such that bias will be minimized. In this type of study, in the descriptive study and diagnostic study, there is very mean study must be such that bias will be very minimized and the reliability of the evidence collected maximized. Okay, the reliability of the evidence collected maximized. These two study, namely descriptive and the diagnostic, through the somewhat difference in purpose, present similar requirement for the research design. In the formulative or the exploratory study, mainly the premium is on discover of the ideas and insight. Therefore, the research design, in the research design corresponding to such study must be very flexible enough to permit the consideration of different aspects of a phenomenon. Now I will discuss about the sample size. Sample size is also very vital for the research of any research work. The sample size, we have to choose the sample size. And this sample size is also very important. How we will choose the sample size? First of all, overall goal of any study in accuracy is a measurement, that is the value of the phenomenon we measure should be with little error. And ଆମେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ବି କିଛି ଗୋଟେ ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚ କରୁଛନ୍ତି ମାନେ error must be there, and these source of error are classified as either randomly or systematically. The errors that may become randomly or systematically, and the precision corresponds to the reduction of the random error, and that precision can be improved by in two ways. Primarily means it by increasing the sample size. If we will take the sample size very large, then the what the error will be very less. But it can also be improved by modifying the design of the study also. If we will modify the design of the study, it can be also reduced. What is systemic error? Systemic error means what? ଆମେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଗୋଟେ ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚ କରୁଛନ୍ତି ସେ ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚ କରିବା ସମୟରେ ଆମେ କିଛି ସାମ୍ପଲ ସାଇଜ କୁ କିଛି ସାମ୍ପଲ ସାଇଜ କୁ ଆମେ କଣ କରୁଛନ୍ତି ନଉଛନ୍ତି ତ ସେଇ ସାମ୍ପଲ ସାଇଜ କୁ ନେଇକି ହିଁ ଆମେ ନେଲା ବେଳକୁ ଯେତେ ଆମେ ଲାର୍ଜ ସାଇଜ ଅଫ ସାମ୍ପଲ ନବା ଆମର ଲାଗୁଛି ସିଷ୍ଟମେଟିକ ଏରର ମଧ୍ୟ ସେତିକି କମ ଆସିବ. And what is the systematic error? Systematic error means it is the validity consisting mainly two components. What is the two components? Mainly that validity of the inferences as they pertain to people outside the study population. एमती नुह जी आमे खाली जो ग्रुप को नहीं थिबा से ग्रुप को खाली आमे ग्रुप रू ही आमे डाटा कलेक्शन करके सेइटू ही आमे research study करबानी. Out of group also we will take the study. That is the what main invalidity of the inference as they pertain to people outside the study population also. And the validity of the inference drawn from the observation of the individuals we have studied. Internal validity. That is the external validity. যদি আমি ସେ ଗ୍ରୁପ ଭିତରୁ ନଉଛନ୍ତି ତାହେଲେ ତାକୁ କୁହାଯିବ ଇଣ୍ଟରନାଲ ଭ୍ୟାଲିଡିଟି. ଯଦି ସେ ଗ୍ରୁପ କୁ ଛାଡିକି ବାହାରୁ ଯଦି ବି ଆମେ କିଛି ଷ୍ଟଡି ନଉଛନ୍ତି ଫର ଦ ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚ ୱାର୍କ that is called as the external validity. ବୁଝି ହଉଛି?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is that error? What is that random error? What is that random error? Random error what? Random error is the that part of our experience that we cannot predict. Okay. Random error has many components, but the most important one is the process of selecting the subject for the study. Okay. In the sample error, mainly is the process of selecting the subject for the study. And the process is called the sampling. That process is called the sampling, and the error there is called as the sampling error. Okay. The process of selecting the subject for the study. एते सारा मास भितरु आमे जो किछिटा सब्जेक्ट को आमे चूज करिबा माने किछिटा सैंपल को आमे नबा, that is called as the what sample. In the process, in which process we will sampling, in the process is called as the sampling, and the error in that procedure it's called as the sampling error. बुझिएला?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
And the process is called the sampling, and the error in the sampling is called as the sampling error. The primary way to reduce the random error is to increase the precision by having the larger sample size. ମୁଁ ପ୍ରଥମରୁ କହିଛି ଯେତେବେଳେ ଆମେ ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚ କରିବା ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚ ୱାର୍କ ପାଇଁ ଆମେ ସବୁବେଳେ sample size ର ଯେତେ ଲାର୍ଜ ଥିବ ଆମ error ମଧ୍ୟ ସେଇ ଅନୁସାରେ ସେତେ ସେତେ କମି କମି ଆସିବ ବୁଝିଲା ଆମେ ଯୋଉ ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚ କରିବା ସେଥିରେ ଆମେ ସକ୍ସେସଫୁଲ ହେଇପାରିବା ଆମର sampling ଯେତେବେଳେ ଆମେ କଲେକ୍ସନ କରିବା डाटा ସେ sampling size ସବୁବେଳେ ଆମେ ଲାର୍ଜ नबा जितने लार्ज नबा हम एरर सेटिंग मते the rate of error will be decreases बुझियो जी राकेश
Yes, ma'am.
okay now the level of statistical significance the level of statistical significance means the level of statistical significance it is called as the alpha error okay what is that alpha error the value mainly observed in the sample are used either to reject or not rejected as the what null hypothesis I mean null hypothesis जानile null in the level of statistical significance it is called as the alpha error in that alpha error now we will observe in the sample mainly that are used either to I mean जो null hypothesis थिबो से null hypothesis को either हमें reject करिबा otherwise हमें कौन करिबा ताको not rejected and but these values are subject to sampling fluctuation and may or may not lead to the correct conclusion okay sampling रो जो fluctuation नबो fluctuation जो रहिबो they may or may not lead to the correct conclusion also and two types of error can be occur okay these two types of error mainly wrongly rejecting a true null hypothesis that may be null hypothesis correct थिबो बट आमे आमो भूल ने आमे ताको जदि रिजेक्ट करि देथिबा बुझिला तो इट इज कॉल्ड एज द टाइप 1 error there are mainly two types of error is there one is type 1 error and another one is type 2 error बुझियो छि ना नहीं
मैम से जो रिजेक्शन मैम रिजेक्शन ऑफ नल हाइपोथेसिस सेटा बुझे परलेनी से जो
ठीक
एरर
है एबे बुझिलो एति के बुझिछ लेवल ऑफ स्टैटिस्टिकल सिग्निफिकेंस इट इज अदरवाइज कॉल्ड एज द अल्फा एरर
यस मैम
हाँ आमे जेतेबेले आमे गोटे रिसर्च करूचंती गोटे हाइपोथेसिस नउचंती द वैल्यू मेनली ऑब्जर्व्ड इन द सैंपल आर यूज्ड एदर आमे जो वैल्यू आमे नउचंती जो सैंपल साइज नउचंती दैट मे बी रिजेक्टेड और मे नॉट बी रिजेक्टेड यस और नो से रिजेक्ट ही पारे रिजेक्ट न भी ही पारे मे नॉट बी रिजेक्टेड तो दैट इज कॉल्ड एज द व्हाट null hypothesis Yes, and these the value only observed in the sample.
मैम
Yes.
मैम
हाँ
नल हाइपोथेसिस जदि रिजेक्ट हे गला देन सेटा अल्टरनेटिव हाइपोथेसिस हे जिवो
हाँ सेटा तो मैं कहली ना गुरु if the null hypothesis is rejected then आमे ताको कौन कहबा alternative hypothesis वो पूर्वरु पढ़िली ने एबे एबे आजी क्लास रे कहउथि ने से कथा
आ
ना
मैम एठी जो लिखा है wrongly rejecting null hypothesis माने wrongly rejecting माने कोन ना
wrongly माने माने करे हमें sample size बहुत कम नेकिबा तो सेइतिरो हमें कलेक्शन करबा जो माने जो सैम्पलिंग जो हमें null hypothesis की हमर अल्टरनेटिव hypothesis जदि मु प्रथम रे कहछि सब बेले जते बेले हमें एनी रिसर्च वर्क पे हमु कोन दरकार सैंपल साइज शुड बी वेरी मोर जदि अल्प थिला कि कोन से सब बेले तो सैंपल साइज ऊपर डिपेंड करनी को एरिया रे माने करे मु किछि प्रोजेक्ट करबी रिसर्च करबी जेंति कि माने करो मिड डे मील प्लान को नेकी तो मिड डे मील प्लान को हेले कोठी करबी मु कोन करबी तो पब्लिक रे नेकी करबी तो से भलिया केस सब बेले डाटा हमें 100% एक्यूरेसी पाइबो बोली किछि माने नै बुझी पारछ ना सेही केस जो नल हाइपोथेसिस रिजेक्टेड हे गला एइदर रिजेक्ट हैला किबा जदि भी नॉट रिजेक्टेड दैट इज कॉल्ड एज योर नल हाइपोथेसिस but their value are subject to sampling fluctuation may or may not be lead to the correct conclusion जो sample रो जो fluctuation हबो सेटा correct हबो बोली किछि माने नै न correct हबो बोली किछि माने नै and two types of error can occur type 1 error otherwise type 2 error हमें wrongly जदि हमें rejecting the true माने करो गोटे null hypothesis ठीक अछि ठीक थाई कि भी जदि हमें देखो भूल बोली हमें proof କରୁଛନ୍ତି reject କରିଦଉଛି ତାକୁ accept କରୁନାହାନ୍ତି then that type of error is called as the type 1 error. Understood?
Error.
ଯଦି
Yes,
null
ma'am.
hypothesis ଆମର correct ଅଛି true ଅଛି
Hmm.
till we were rejecting that null hypothesis and we are not accepted that null hypothesis, that is called as the type 1 error. ବୁଝିହେଲା?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
The
ma'am.
probability of this error is popularly known as the p-value, and the probability is denoted as the p-value, and the maximum p-value allowed in the study problem is called as the level of significance. जोटा the maximum p-value जो probability p जो अच्छी तार जो maximum पूरा ऊपर level पर्यंत जाऊँगी maximum p-value are allowed in the study or the problem is called as the level of significance, or the sometimes it is also denoted as the alpha level. Okay.
Yes.
What is that type 1 error and what is type 2 error? যদি আমি statistical decision নিলা বলে if we will null hypothesis, if the null hypothesis is rejected, okay, কেতବେଳେ rejected? যদি null hypothesis true ଅଛି and if that will be rejected, that type of error is called as the type 1 error. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
If that null hypothesis will be false but we are not rejected, and that is called as the type 2 error. Null hypothesis reject ଅଛି ମାନେ null hypothesis false ଅଛି ମାନେ ଆମ କାମ କଣ ତାକୁ reject କରିବା, but ଆମେ ତାକୁ
Okay.
not rejected ଆମେ reject କରିବା ନାହିଁ, ଆମେ we have to accept that, then that types of error is called as the type 2 error. ବୁଝିହେଲା?
Yes, ma'am.
କଣ ଏନର୍ଜି ନାହିଁ ନା ପଢିବାର ଇଚ୍ଛା ନାହିଁ ନା କଣ କଣ ଅସୁବିଧା କଣ ହଉଛି?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
Buchhud.
ରାକେଶ
Yes, ma'am.
ବୁଝିପାରୁଛ?
Ma'am.
Now I will discuss about the beta error. What is beta error? Beta error is the chance of missing a real effect. That means in beta error, the second type of error is failure to reject the null hypothesis. And when it is actually false, the probability of this mirror is denoted by the beta. Okay, and this is also referred to the beta error. And the complementary of this probability of this type 2 error is called as the statistical power denoted by the 1 beta, about which we will, this type of error is called as the beta error. In beta error is nothing, beta error is the second type of error is failure to reject of the what null hypothesis, and this when it is actually false thaiki mote ame jodi null hypothesis ko ame kon kariba failure to reject, jodi false achi tale ame to reject kariba kata, but if we will failure to reject this type of null hypothesis, then that is called as the what beta error. Okay, and the complementary of the probability of type 2 error is called the statistical power denoted by the 1 beta, about which this type of error is called as the what beta error. Then what is power? Power meaning the statistical power is the complement to the beta error, that is the probability of type 2 error or the detecting or statistical significant as a postulated level of effect, that is called as your power. Power is nothing, power is the statistical power in the complement of the beta error, that is the probability of the type 2 error or the detecting or statistically significant or a postulated level of the effect, that is your what power. এটা এত দরকার নেই আমার ইয়ে মানে statistics রে. Then what is optimum sample? What do you mean by optimum sample? For the any research work, you have to choose the sample. And what is that optimum sample? Optimum sample is one which mainly fulfills the requirement of the efficiency and representativeness, flexibility, reliability. Thus, the sample should be very small enough to avoid the unnecessary expenses, but large enough to avoid the sample error. ମୁଁ ଆରମ୍ଭରୁ କହିଛି while we are conducting any research, we have to choose the very large sample size for avoiding of the sampling error, and it yields the statistical representative and the significant result also. This is all about your optimum sample. And while we are collecting this sample size, na, we have to calculate the sample size. It mainly includes the margins of the error or the limit of the accuracy. Margins of the error means what? How much is the percentage or the average to be secured from the sample likely to vary from the true mean. I will discuss about the mean, median, and more. And probability or the confidence level. What is the confidence level? What is probability? Probability is otherwise called as the confidence level. What is the confidence level? In the research, now, 2 degree of probability or the confidence are very well known. Two probability or the confidence are very well known, mainly used, and these 2 degree of probability or the confidence are very well known and they are used mainly. One of these is the 0.995 level of probability, and that is there are 95 chance out of the 100, and that the sample estimate will not exceed the limits of the tolerance or the margins of the error. And the second level is the 0.99 level of the probability. That means in there are the 99 chances in the 100 of not exceeding the margin of error aimed at. That is the probability or the confidence level. I mean 100 to either 0.95% number or otherwise 99% number. That level of probability. It is called as the probability of confidence level. Today I already discussed about the hypothesis. Hypothesis is nothing. Hypothesis is the supposition and that are mainly tested by collecting the fact and that leads to the acceptancy or the rejection. Say hypothesis को हमें accept करी पारो कि reject भी करी पारो. Hypothesis can be stated as the what? Positive declaration or negative declaration or the implicit questions also. In the positive declaration, the infant mortality rate is very higher in one region than the another. It is positive. I mean, region to region যদি আমি দেখিবা তাহলে ଗୋଟେ ଜାଗାରେ mortality rate ପିଲାର mortality rate ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ଏରିଆକୁ ଦେଖିବାକୁ ଯାହେଲେ ମଧ୍ୟ ଅଧିକା ହେଇଥାଏ ପାରେ କମ ବି ହେଇଥାଏ ପାରେ. Negative declaration କ'ଣ? There is no difference between the infant mortality rate and the two regions. That is called as the negative mortality rate. Implicit questions I already discussed about that. To study the association between the infant mortality and the geographical region. एक ही हमारा relation रहेगा. हमें ताको relate करिवा ताको जो mortality rate infant mortality rate सहित हमारा geographical region को जगह रे अधिक mortality रहुची किबा को एरिया रे कम mortality rate. It is called as the implicit questions. I already discussed about the power is the probability of detecting a statistical significance. Power is nothing. Power is the detecting a statistical significance as a postulated level of effect. And confidence level refers to the confidence a researcher would like to place in a sample estimate being close to the true estimate or to be within the limits of tolerance or accuracy set for the study. ना बुझिला सबू
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
हाँ
ma'am.
आउ गोटे कहिदिले हमर confidence level is nothing, mainly confidence level is refers to the confidence researchers. Nice sir, okay sir जाओ. confidence level. Sample confidence level. Limit to distance margin is very accurate.
Ma'am, your voice is not properly audible.
No.
The voice is getting stuck in between.
Okay. Actually, your network problem is going on. That's why I'm standing just in front of the window. Rakesh,
Yes, ma'am.
hello. Am I audible?
Yes, now audible.
Actually, I am just standing in front of the window only, just nearer to the window because of this network issue only. No network is here. तो अब ଏବେ ଶୁଣା ଯାଉଛି ନା? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, now
Yes,
audible.
ma'am.
Okay, okay. और जोठी न ଶୁଣାଯିବ ମୋତେ କହିବେ again I will change the position. Then what I will be do? I'm just standing in just very close to the window only. Okay. For the network issue. Okay. Anyhow, I will start the epidemic or the designs. Am I audible right now?
Yes, ma'am.
The design strategies in the epidemiological research, na, mainly epidemiology. What do you mean by epidemiology? Epidemiology is Rakesh, hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Audible? Am I audible? ରାକେଶ ଶୁଣା ଯାଉଛି?
Yes, ma'am.
ହଁ ଜଷ୍ଟ ଟିକେ ୱେଟ୍ କରିତ ମୁଁ ନହେଲେ ଜାଗା ମାନେ ଏଇଠୁ ଟିକେ ପୋଜିସନ ଚେଞ୍ଜ କରୁଛି ଟିକେ କ୍ଲିୟର ନେଟୱାର୍କ ଆସିବ ଏଠି ସୁବିଧା ହବ ପାଇଁ ହେଲା। ହ୍ୟାଲୋ।
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Epidemiology. Am I audible, Rakesh?
Yes, ma'am.
Rakesh, am I audible? Epidemiology. First, I will discuss about in the first class, I already discussed about epidemiology. And epidemiology means what? Epidemiology is nothing. Epidemiology means it deals with the distribution and the determinants of the disease frequency in human population. Okay, what is the mainly epidemiology deals with the distribution and the determinants of the disease frequency in human population. It is called the epidemiology. And mainly the case study or the case control study or for that method, the follow up or the cohort or the intervention or the control trials, etc. we have to use. देखो जितेबाला आम गोटे पपुलेसन गोटे ग्रुप ऑफ पपुलेसन गोटे मेंचाए लोकों भितर डिजीज डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन कौन होची डिजीज डिटरमिनेंट किए होची कॉज किए और केते फ्रिक्वेंसी रे डिजीज टा रिकरेंसी होची तो सेठी फास्ट आम देखा फॉलोअप करवा एंड तार कोहोर्ट स्टडी करवा एंड केस स्टडीज विभिन्न जी पपुलेशन आउट ऑफ 100 पपुलेशन केते जनकर केस स्टडी आम 30टा केस स्टडी कि 40 जन पपुलेशन को लेकिन केस स्टडी को आम देखा एंड तापर तार कंट्रोल ट्रायल्स माने तार कंट्रोल मेथड वी हैव टू अडॉप्ट ओके दिस इज द design strategy in the epidemiological research. And mainly, it is very important to know that the research strategy or the research design can be broadly categorized according to whether the investigation focus according to minute. That is in to and analytical category. General logical.
Ma'am, not audible. There is a lag in the audio.
Okay. If I'm not audible, why am not said? Okay, listen. Based on this broad category, na, therefore, mainly based on these two broad category, therefore, the design strategy in epidemiological mainly classified into two categories. Okay, one is the descriptive category, and the another one is the analytical category. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
What is the descriptive studies? Descriptive studies means by the names it deals with the describing the general characteristic of the disease. Okay. In descriptive study will study about the characteristic of the disease and its distribution, and particularly in the relation to the person, place, and or the time. In analytical study, on the other hand, focus on the determinants of the disease by testing the hypothesis. Okay. Mainly in the analytical study, it focus on the determinants of the disease by the testing the hypothesis, mainly formulated from the descriptive study, with the ultimate objective of assessing whether a particular exposure causes or prevent the diseases, causes the disease or the prevent the disease. In the descriptive study, mainly it includes the correlational study, case study, cross-sectional study. Okay. In the descriptive study, we will discuss about the. It mainly it includes the descriptive study. It includes the cross-sectional survey, case studies, and the correlational study. But in the analytical study, it describe about the mainly describe about the observational study, cohort study, experimental study, and the interventional study. Okay, in the analytical study, it mainly describe about the observational study, cohort study, experimental, and the interventional study. This is all about your research design in the epidemiology. What is that? One by one, I will discuss about the first. I will discuss about the descriptive study, and later I will discuss about the analytical study. You just remember study, mainly the types of study. What's it? No, what's it? Biography knowledge, biography. In type of study, mainly two types of study. One is the descriptive study, and another one is your analytical study. What is the descriptive study? In the descriptive study, it includes the cross-sectional study, case study or the reports, and the correlational study. But in the analytical study, it is mainly categorized into two types. One is the observational study, and another one is your experimental study. What is that observational study? In the observational study, we will study about it again classified into three types. One is the cross-sectional study, another one is the case control study, and the last one is your cohort study. Bujhela?
Yes, ma'am.
Now I will discuss about what is the descriptive study. Descriptive study are concerned with the distribution of the diseases, including the consideration of what population or subgroups do or do not develop the diseases, in what geographical location, and how the frequency of occurs varies over the time. In the descriptive study, we will discuss about the Mainly, it will include the distribution of the disease. Okay, the distribution of the disease, and mainly it includes the consideration of what population and subgroups do or do not develop this disease in what geographical location. को area रे को प्रकार disease होउची and तार subgroup को माने affect होउचंती and तार mainly it includes the geographical region, location, how the frequency of occurrence varies over time. Gote over time be amar kete frequency re diseases occur. And this descriptive study mainly seeks the magnitude of the problems in different population groups. Say in terms of the prevalence and the incidence, or to establish normal or abnormal level of measurement. Okay, mainly in this descriptive study, we'll discuss about mainly it includes the problem in the different population groups. Okay, what type of problem they are suffering, and say in terms of the what is the main cause of the problem, and how will we prevent that problem, and what is the incidence of that problem, and to establish the normal or abnormal level of the measurement also. In the descriptive study, mainly are concerned with the descriptive distribution of diseases or the health condition by the person, place, and time. बुझिएला?
Yes, ma'am.
And mainly this descriptive study, it indices of the person examined in descriptive study, it mainly includes the demographic and the lifestyle variables. Mainly it includes the demographic and the lifestyle variable. What is demographic? Demographic means age and sex distribution. केते age of peoples मानको ज़्यादा होची and then sex distribution. whether मेल मानको ज़्यादा होची या फीमेल मानको ज़्यादा होची and socio-economic status. को socio-economic status से ସେମାନେ belongs करछन्ती जोथि के disorder ज्यादा होची किबा family structure, it also including the marital status and the number of single parents families also, and racial, ethics, and the religious composition also, consumption of the various food supplements and the medicine. ए सब जाक जाउची हम descriptive study रे. In in the descriptive study also may also use the information from the very diverse sources, such as the mainly it is the census data and the vital statistical data from the national surveillance programs, and also employment health examination records, clinical records from the hospital and the private clinics also, as well as national figure on consumption of the food, nutrient, medication, and other products. Okay, and this information is mainly often routinely collected. These information means the data collection where the surveillance programs, we have to conduct the different types of surveillance program, and also we have to collect the different types of examination records like the employment health examination records, clinical records from the hospital sites and the private clinics, as well as the national figures on consumption of the food, nutrient, medication, or the other product. Since this information is often routinely collected and easily available also. Descriptive studies are generally far less expensive and time consuming than the analytical study. যদি আমি দুটাকে compare করিবা, and these descriptive studies are very less expensive. Also time also very less time is required for conducting this type of analytical, this descriptive study. And in the descriptive study, the emphasis is in estimation rather than the testing. ଆମେ ଏଇଠି ବହୁତ ସାରା ଆମେ estimate କରିବା, ଆମେ ଏଇଠି କିଛି pathological, physiological testing ବିଶେଷ ज़्यादा କରିବା ନାହିଁ in the descriptive study. And some of the quantities we might want to estimate like the prevalence of the disease. ଯେତେବେଳେ ଆମେ descriptive study କରୁଛନ୍ତି ସେ ସମୟରେ ଆମେ ଦେଖିବା what is the how to prevent the diseases and the nature history of the diseases, say disease nature କ'ଣ, and the resource mainly that the resource required to treat the diseases. कौन resource दरकार to treat the diseases, and attitude and perception about the disease condition. Okay, and in the descriptive epidemiological studies, the mainly it is useful for the provide the valuable information to the health and the nutritional care providers, mainly the policy makers, and administrative planning for the health and nutritional care utilization, and for the allocating the resource efficiently, and also planning for the effective preventive and therapeutic educating program. Okay, mainly research efficiently, and also planning to effective preventive and therapeutic education program. And these descriptive studies present the first important clues about the possible determinants of the disease condition. Okay. And these type of studies are sometimes referred to the hypothesis also. It is also generating the studies. The three important uses of the descriptive study. Why we will be use this descriptive study for the trend analysis? It mainly includes the trend analysis and health and nutritional care planning and the hypothesis generation. Why we will adopt this descriptive study? Because of this descriptive study, mainly therefore it includes the trend analysis and also health and nutritional care planning and hypothesis generation also. Hypothesis generation means what? Formulating the research question. Okay, that is the hypothesis generation. And these descriptive study are quite useful. Frequent error in reports of the descriptive study is overstepping the data. There are different types of descriptive study like that. They mainly include the correlational study of population and a case study or the reports, cross-sectional survey in the individuals. Okay, in what is that correlational study? Correlational study is comes under the what? Descriptive study. What is that correlational study? In correlational study are already mainly the in this type of study we will collect the data from the entire population and to compare the disease frequency between the different groups or the segments during the same periods of time or in the same population at the different point of time. Am I audible? Rakesh, am I
Yes, ma'am.
audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Audible.
Okay. ବୁଝି ହଉଛି କିଛି ନା ବୁଝି ହଉନି?
Half is understandable and half is out of mind.
Out of mind. Hello?
Yes, ma'am. Little bit.
Am I
I
audible
think.
or not?
Yes, ma'am.
What you
Audible.
are thinking? Audible, na? In this
Yes, yes.
descriptive study, this descriptive study mainly it includes the what? Correlational study, case study or the reports or the cross-sectional survey. And these all are the comes under the descriptive study. Now I will discuss about the correlational study. What is that correlational study? Correlational study means in the correlational study mainly it explores the statistical connection between the disease in different population groups and estimated exposure in groups rather than the individual. बुझिए ना?
Yes, ma'am.
कौन बुझिलो? Mainly correlational study, it explores the statistical connection between the what? Disease in different population groups and estimated exposures in groups rather than the individual. आम ग्रुप रू आम स्टडी करिबा डिजीज को लेकी, नॉट ए पर्सनल, नॉट ए गोटे गोटे लोकन को लेकी आम स्टडी करिबानी, ग्रुप ग्रुप लोकन को लेकी देखिबा, ताहले तो आम ताको कोरिलेट करि परिबे ना जणक सहित आ जणक, बुझी होची ना नहीं?
Yes, ma'am.
And these correlate mainly they may be correlate anemia rates by country with the estimate of the low birth weight or the low intake of iron rich food or the parasitic infestation such as the hookworm infestation. যদি ଗୋଟେ ଗ୍ରୁପ ର କୋରିଲେସନ ଆମେ କରିବା, ଗୋଟେ ଗ୍ରୁପ ର ପପୁଲେସନ ର ଆମେ ଷ୍ଟଡି କରିବା, ତାହେଲେ ଯଦି ମନେ କରୁ ସେମାନେ କୌଣସି କାରଣ ବଶତଃ ୱାର୍ମ ଇନଫେକ୍ସନ ବାହାରକୁ ମନେକର ଯାଉଥିବେ, ଲାଟିନ୍ ଯାଉଥିବେ, they will not wear the chappals. At that time the chances of the hookworm infection will be more. In that cases also the rate of the anemia will be increases. So if we will study in the group ରୁ ଆମେ ନେଇକି ଯେତେବେଳେ ଆମେ ଷ୍ଟଡି କରିବା ତାହେଲେ ଆମେ ତାକୁ କୋରିଲେଟ କରିକି ଆମେ ଜାଣିପାରିବା, that is called as the correlational study. Understood?
Yes, ma'am. Understood.
Correlational study are used to look for the relationship between the variables. That means in the correlational study, we have to correlate between the two variables and the correlational coefficient denoted by the R. ओके कोरिलेशनल जो स्टडी लाइक नल हाइपोथेसिस को जेंति हमें x0 लेखुथिले आ जत अल्टरनेटिव हाइपोथेसिस को h1 बोली डिनोट करथिले सेंति हमर कोरिलेशनल स्टडी को हमें r को डिनोट करबा एंड इज द डिस्क्रिप्टिव मेजर्स फॉर द एसोसिएशन इन द कोरिलेशनल study. Okay, and this coefficient means the value vary from the +1 to -1, that is called as the coefficient. Quantifies the extent to which there is a linear relationship between the exposure and the disease. Okay, disease or exposure like what a relationship. Example hochi a correlational study might suggest that there is a relationship between the distance component and the coronary heart disease. That ଏବେ ଯଦି ମୁଁ ଆମେ ଏକ୍ସାମ୍ପଲ ଦବା ଯେମିତି ମନେକର mainly diet ଏଠି ଯଦି ଆମେ ଏକ୍ସାମ୍ପଲ ଦବା ଯେତେ dietary pattern it directly affect our heart disorder. Okay, ଯେମିତି କି it's a co-relationship between the study might suggest that there is a relationship between the intake of high fat diet and the cause of the coronary heart disease, but it cannot be proved that the change in one variable cause a change in the second variable. That means ଆମେ ଏଇଟା ବି କହିପାରିବାନି ଯେ ମାନେ ଯଦି ଆମେ ଚେଞ୍ଜ କରିଦବା ମାନେ ଆମେ ମନେକର से भाया डाएट न नबा ता माने नुह जे हार्ट डिजीज आउ हबनी बोली हबो कि सेमति केबे संभव कि दैट मींस आ भितरे कोरिलेशन रहउची एंड change in one variable cause a change in the second variable, and other factors might play a role including. Rakesh, am I audible? Rakesh?
Ma'am, that example part was a little bit not understood.
Difficult. I want to say one thing. If will the relationship between the dietary component and the coronary heart disease, okay, that means if we will change the dietary pattern of any person, if the person is affected by the heart disorder, it does not mean that in future the person will be not affected by the any kind of heart disorder. Understood? That means it cannot be proved that a change in one variable cause a change in the second variable. Other factor might mani see gote hi karan nuho. Mo pratham from the very beginning I already said all of you that one causative organism is not responsible for the one disorder. Yes or no?
Yes.
That's why if we will change the dietary pattern, then it does not mean that the person will be not affected by the heart disorder. Because there are so many other associated factors is also there, which is responsible for the heart disorder, like the stress, otherwise any kind of lifestyle disorder, otherwise any kind of disorder also like diabetic or hypertension. It also may be cause the what? Heart disorder. Yes or no? That type
Yes.
of relation is called as the correlational study. In the correlational study are therefore useful for the formulation of the hypothesis. Okay, and the correlational data can raise the hypothesis that consumption of N3 fatty acid can decrease the risk of the coronary heart disease. Okay, if we consume excess amount of N3 fatty acid, it may decrease the cause of the heart disorder. Okay, and the strength of the correlational study, the chief strength of the correlational study is that they constitute the first step in the investigating a possible exposure disease relationship which contribute to their frequent use in the epidemiological research. Now I will discuss about the case study. Case study is otherwise called as the, in the research paper, in the case study is otherwise called as the reports. What is the reports? Reports कहले कौन बुझे तुम simply तमिल language से कहलो what do you mean by reports?
Systematic collection of data.
Systematic collection of the data. Reports is the qualitative descriptive research that is mainly used to look at the individuals. What is that reports? A small group of case study. First, I will discuss about the case study. What is that case study? ମୁଁ କହିଥିଲି from the very large population କିମ୍ବା ଆମେ ତ ଯେକୌଣସି ଆମେ ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚ କରିବା ଗ୍ରୁପ ଅଫ ପପୁଲେସନ ରୁ ଆମେ डाटा कलेक्ट करवा तो ସେଇଠୁ ଆମେ 20 କିମ୍ବା 30 କିମ୍ବା 50 केस स्टडी गोटे पेशेंट नबा तार केस स्टडी माने तार पैथोलॉजिकल इन्वेस्टिगेशन तार एई जो रोग होइछि माने कर हार्ट डिजीज होइछि तार लिपिड प्रोफाइल केते अछि तार ब्लड प्रेशर अछि कि नाही तार यूरिन तार किडनी ठीक अछि कि नाही एथि हम बहुत सारा पैथोलॉजिकल इन्वेस्टिगेशन करिया को पड़िबो तो सेई जो डिटेल्स पैरामीटर्स ऑफ दैट पेशेंट we will be study very briefly. That is the case study of that particular patient. A small group of participant or a group as a whole, mainly it refers to the collection and presentation of detailed information. Okay, collection and presentation of the detailed information about a particular participant. And mainly institution or a small group frequently including the accounts of subject. While using the case study, the researchers do not focus on the discovery of a universal generalized truth. While we will preparing the case study, at that time we will not discover of a very universal or the generalized truth. Nor do they typically look for cause-effect relationship. Okay, they typically look for the cause-effect relationship. Instead, emphasis is placed on the exploration, observation and description. In the case study, आमे किछि एमती गोटे जनरलाइज ट्रुथ बाहर करि परिबा नै कि किछि गोटे न्यू जिंस डिस्कवर भी करि ताले कोन करि परिबा इन द केस स्टडी वी विल गॉट द टोटल द प्लेस मेनली फोकस ऑन द एक्सप्लोरेशन observation and the description. And what is the goal of this case study? The main goal of this case study is to offer the new variables and the questions for further research. जदि आमे case study नेले ही आमे ताकू धरिकी आगुकू जो न्यू वेरिएबल्स पाइबा सेइथरो विभिन्न क्वेश्चनरी फॉर्म रे आमे आगुकू रिसर्च से प्रोसीड करि परिबा and statistical based studies and are concerned with the distribution of a particular trait or a small number of traits in a population. Mainly there are different types of data collected in the case study. Case study jeta ame nouchandi, it doesn't mean that it's a very particular type of data we will be collected in the case study. There are different types of data will be collected through the case study. These may include the documents, medical records, interviews, direct observation, participant observation, or the artifact. That means we will be in the case study, we will collect the data from the documents also and from the medical records also. I already discussed about the different types of medical pathological investigation will be there and from where we will collect the data also. And in the interview methods also is there and direct observation. That means if we will look at the patient, by the direct observation also we can get some data from the patient sides and from the participant observation and the artifacts also. And individual case study mainly the reports can be expanded to the case series which describe the characteristic of a number of individual patients in instances. And the case series can be therefore referred to the collection of individual case report study which may within a fairly short period of time. And the biggest strength of using the case study, what is the merits of this case study? Because this case series is the epidemiological research, is that it mainly deals with the creativity, innovation, and the context. And it's very useful in the recognition of the new diseases. If we will go through the case study, then only we will be recognition of the new diseases and the formulation of the hypothesis concerning the possible risk factor. Okay, linked to the diseases also. While case studies and the case series are very useful for the hypothesis formulation. This is all about your case study or the reports. Now I will discuss about the cross-sectional study or the survey study. In the research, the survey work is very, very, very vital. What is the survey or the cross-sectional study? The survey or the cross-sectional studies can be either descriptive, otherwise analytical. ମୁଁ ଆଗରୁ କହିଛି କ୍ରସ୍ ସେକ୍ସନାଲ ସ୍ଟडी ଆମେ ଦୁଇଟା ଆଗରେ ପଢୁଛନ୍ତି ଗୋଟାକ ଡେସ୍କ୍ରିପ୍ଟିଭ ସ୍ଟଡିରେ ବି ଆସିବ କ୍ରସ୍ ସେକ୍ସନାଲ ସ୍ଟडी इन द एनालिटिकल स्टडी also we will discuss we will come on a cross sectional study ଆସିବ in the most of the descriptive study this cross ଯଦି ଆମେ descriptive study କଥା ଚିନ୍ତା କରିବା in that cross sectional study nature and generally called the survey. What is that survey? In the cross-sectional survey is a type of descriptive epidemiological study design in individuals that mainly involves the observation of some subset of population of items all at the same time. What is the cross-sectional study? In this cross-sectional survey is the type of descriptive epidemiological study designed in individuals that mainly involves the observation of some subset of the population of items all at the same time. That is the cross-sectional study or the survey study. But in the descriptive cross-sectional survey, na, useful of the assessing disease status at a point in time. That means the characterize the prevalence of the disease is a specified population. With a group of population, first time देखिबा what is the prevalence of that diseases. केमते हम ताको prevalence करी परिबा and prevalence can be assessed at either at a point in time means point prevalence or over a defined period of time that means period prevalence. जदि गोटे particular time रे नहीं कि हमें करिबा prevalence that is called as the point prevalence. हमें गोटे period पर्यंत देखि करिबा that is called as the period prevalence. And the basic strength of the cross-sectional study. What is the basic strength of cross-sectional study? Mainly, they can study an entire population or a representative sample. And they also provide an estimate of the prevalence of all factors measures and have greater generalizability. And these cross-sectional studies are generally useful for planning or administrating the preventive or the healthcare services. You remember this point for the descriptive cross-sectional studies. Mainly it is used for the preventive or the healthcare services and the administrating and the planning of the new things and the surveillance program and the survey and the polls. It is very important to note that the cross-sectional study are useful only for the what? Finding the some kinds of association rather than for the testing the hypothesis. But in the analytical study, now we have to testing the hypothesis properly. In analytical cross-sectional study, in contrast, compare the proportion of exposed persons who are diseased with the proportion of non-exposed person. Okay, in the analytical cross, mu kahithili descriptive cross-sectional study is there and the analytical cross-sectional study is there. In both, in the descriptive study, in the analytical study, you will be got the what cross-sectional study. But in the analytical cross-sectional study, you have to contrast, compare the proportion of the exposed persons who are diseased with the proportion of non-exposed person who are diseased. बुझी होची?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, I will give you one example. Like in the analytical cross-sectional survey in India, AIDS prevention, AIDS prevention control the project what APAC. That means which has been implemented intensive prevention activities in the Indian state of Tamil Nadu. AIDS prevention. That is the example of your analytical cross-sectional studies. I already discussed about the different types of study, categories of this study. One is the descriptive study, another one is the analytical study. It is a question exam point of view, it's very important. In the descriptive study, it mainly deals with the describing the general characteristic of the diseases. Okay. In descriptive study, it will briefly describe about the general characteristic of the diseases and also distribution, particularly in relation to the person, place, and time. You remember in the descriptive study, the mainly we will discuss about the general characteristic of the diseases, distribution, and particularly in relation to the time, place, and what person. And the important use of the descriptive study mainly includes the trend, the analysis, health nutrition care planning, hypothesis generation, and formulating the research questions. Okay. And in the Descriptive study mainly design option. It includes the correlational study of population, as well as it also includes the what? Case study or the reports of the cross-sectional survey also. And these correlational studies explore the statistical connection between the disease in different population groups and estimated exposure in the groups rather than the individual. ମୁଁ କହିଥିଲି ଏଠି group ରୁ ଆମେ data collection କରିବା, and this correlational study mainly it explores the statistical connection between the disease in the different population groups and it estimated the exposure in the groups rather than the individual. Correlational study le ebe modhe individual kotha ame chinta karna, it will mainly study estimated exposure in the groups rather than the individuals. And these correlational study are therefore useful for the formulation of the hypothesis. For any kind of formulation of this hypothesis, this correlational study is very vital. And also a case study or reports. In the case study is the form of, I already discussed about that, case study is the form of qualitative descriptive research, and that is mainly used, it is used to look at the individual or the small group of participants and a group or the whole group. And mainly this case study or the case reports, it refers to the collection and the presentation of detailed information. Mainly it collects the detailed information and also collection and presentation of the detailed information about a particular participant. And mainly a particular participant or the institution or the small group, frequently including the accounts of the subject. Individual case study reports can be expanded to case series, which describe the characteristic of the number of individual, number of patient, or number of instances. And the biggest strength of using the case study, the case series, the epidemiological research is therefore it mainly deals with the what? Context, creativity, and the innovation. And this descriptive study are cross-sectional in nature and are generally called as the survey. What is survey? For the research, the survey is very vital because most of the descriptive study are cross-sectional in nature and generally called this cross-sectional study is called as the survey. In the descriptive cross-sectional analysis survey, therefore, as you have realized by now, it's generally useful for the assessing the disease and status at a point in time, and they simply characterize the prevalence of disease in a specified population. Mainly, it's simply characterized by the prevalence of the disease in a specified population. What is variable? Class arambha ବେଳେ କହୁଥିଲେ. What is variable? Rajesh?
Variable.
Co-founding factors or the variables. Variables refers to the two variables that are mainly confounded when their effect on a response variable cannot be distinguished from each other.
Variable. Ma'am. पुणी थरे.
Many types of studies. केते प्रकार स्टडीज रहिछि एबे हम पढुथिले ने डिस्कशन करूथिले कोन
Case study and cross sectional study.
No, first one is the descriptive study, second one is our
Then
analytical study.
analytical
Understood?
study.
Very good. First one is descriptive study, second one is analytical study. Then descriptive study again divided into three types. One is the what? Correlational study, cross-sectional study, case study. Are you remember?
Yes, ma'am.
First one is correlational study. Second one is case study. Case study is otherwise called as the reports. And the third one is your cross-sectional study. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
And this analytical study is broadly divided into two types. One is your observational study and second one is your experimental study. Okay. Analytical study is broadly divided into two types. One is the experimental study and the second one is your observational study. What is that observational study? Observational study is the cohort study, case control study, cross-sectional study. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
ଏଇଗୁଡ଼ା ଟିକେ ତମେ ଆଜି ଘରେ ଏଇ ୟୁନିଟ୍ ପଢି ଦିଅ, ସବୁ ଜାଣିପାରିବ। ଯଦି ଆଗକୁ ମାଷ୍ଟର ଡିଗ୍ରୀ ପରେ ଯଦି PhD କରିବା ପାଇଁ ଚାହିଁବ କିମ୍ବା ନେଟ୍ ଫେଟ୍ କ୍ୱାଲିଫାଇ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ଚାହିଁବ ଦେନ୍ ଦିସ୍ ପାର୍ଟ, ଏଇ ପାଠ ହେଉଛି ଭେରି ଭାଇଟାଲ। ବୁଝିହେଲା? ଯାହା
Yes, ma'am.
କ୍ୱେଶ୍ଚିନ୍ ଆସିବ ଏଇଥିରୁ ହିଁ ଆସିବ, ଆଉ ବାହାରୁ କିଛି ଆସିବନି। ଏଇଟା ନ ଜାଣିଲେ ତମେ ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚ ଆଗକୁ ବଢିପାରିବ ନାହିଁ। ଓକେ, ପଢ, ଯାହା ଡାଉଟ୍
Yes,
ଥିବ
ma'am.
ମତେ ପୁଣି ତମେ ପଚାରିବ ନେକ୍ସଟ କ୍ଲାସରେ।
ଠିକ ଅଛି, ma'am.
ଓକେ, ଥ୍ୟାଙ୍କ ୟୁ।
Thank you, ma'am.